everybody. How's everybody doing today? Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing today on this Saturday, April 13th? I hope everybody's blessed today. I'm going to talk about OJ Simpson. He just passed away on April 10th. He was born July 9th, 1947, and he just passed away on April 10th, 2024. He was an American football player, actor. He played in the National Football League and the NFL for 11 seasons, primarily with the Buffalo Bills, and regarded as one of the greatest running backs of all time. His professional success overshadowed by the trial and controversial acquittal for the murder of his former wife, Nicole Brown, and her friend Ron Goldman in 1994, as everybody knows about that situation. So, Simpson played college football for the USC Trojans, where he won a Heisman Trophy as a senior and selected first overall by the Bills in the 1969 AFL draft. This is during his 9 seasons with the Bills. He received 5 consecutive Pro Bowls and first-team All-Pro selection from 1972 to 1976. He also led the league in rushing yards 4 times, and rushing touchdowns twice, and in points scored in 1975. He became the first NFL player to rush for more than 2,000 yards in a season, earning him the NFL Most Valuable Player (MVP), and also NFL player to do so in 14-game regular season, because the football league now is 16 games. So he holds the record for most single-season yards per game at 143.1. Says after retiring with the San Francisco 49ers in 1979, he acted in films and television, became a sports broadcaster, and was a spokesman for a wide variety of products and companies, notably Hertz. He was later introduced into the multiple Football Hall of Fame. Says Brown and Goldman were murdered in Los Angeles in the night on June 12, 1994. Simpson was charged with the murder and arrested after an incident in which he tried to flee the police in his friend's car. As everybody knows, the international publicized murder trial lasted from January to October of 1995 and created racial division in the U.S. He was acquitted on October 3rd. 3 years later, he was found liable for the murders in a civil suit from the victims' families, but paid little of the $33.5 million judgment. It says in 2007, Simpson was arrested in Las Vegas and charged with armed robbery and kidnapping. In 2008, he was convicted and sentenced to 33 years imprisonment with a minimum of 9 years without parole. He served the sentence at Lovelock Correctional Center in rural Nevada until being paroled and released in 2017. He was released from parole in 2021 and lived in freedom until his death at age 76 from prostate cancer in 2024. So, like I said, he was born in 1947 in San Francisco, California. Simpson was the son of Eunice. And, this is Durden, administrator at the psychiatric ward, and Jimmy Lee Simpson, a cook, Federal Reserve Bank employee, and a custodian for both bank and private club. His father was also well known. His father was also a well known drag queen in the Bay Area. I didn't know that. Later in life, Jimmy Simpson announced that he was gay. He died of AIDS in 1986. So Simpson's maternal grandmother was from Louisiana. His aunt gave him the name. I can't even say his name. You know what I mean? But I'm just gonna say this. I read a little bit. So Simpson grew up in San Francisco and lived with his family in the housing projects of the low income. Um, and what's that? Port Rio Hill neighborhood. As a child, Simpson developed rickets and wore braces on his legs until the age of 5, giving him bow-legged stance. He earned money by scalping tickets and collecting seat cushions. It says, although Simpson was an all-city football player, Galileo, his mediocre high school grades prevented him from attracting the interest of many college recruiters. As a child's friend, injury in Vietnam War influenced Simpson to stay out of the military. He enrolled in the City College of San Francisco in 1965. He played football both ways as a running back and defensive back, and was named the Junior College All-American team as a running back. City College won the Prune Bowl against Long Beach State, and many colleges saw Simpson as a transfer student for football. This is in 1967. Simpson enrolled at the University of Southern California, USC, in Los Angeles, which he had admired as a young football fan. He also considered going to the University of Utah. He played running back with the Trojans for head coach John McKay in 1967. In 68, Simpson led the nation in a rushing both years under McKay in 1967 with 1,543 yards and 13 touchdowns. In 1968, 1,880 yards on 383 carries. It says as a junior in 1967, Simpson was a close runner-up in the Heisman Trophy ballot, and quarterback Gene Beeben of UCLA in that. So I'm just going to kind of skip some of this because but so this is Buffalo Bills. The first selection of 1969 NFL-AFL draft was held by the AFL's Buffalo Bills after finishing 1-12-1 in 1968. They took Simpson, but he demanded the largest contract in professional sports history, $650,000 over 5 years, equivalent to $4.1 million in 2023. This led to standoff with Bills owner Ralph Wilson, as Simpson threatened to become an actor and skip professional football. Eventually, Wilson agreed to pay Simpson. So Simpson entered the professional football with high expectations, but struggled in his first 3 years, averaging only 622 yards per season. Bills coach John Roch, not wanting to build an offense around one running back, assigned Simpson to do blocking and receiving duties at the expense of running the ball. Let me just skip out some of this. This is okay. So Simpson, he gained 11,236 rushing yards, placing him second on the NFL's all-time rushing list. When he retired, he now stands 21st. He was the NFL's Player of the Year in 1973 and played six Pro Bowls. So I'll just say this. People are gonna have their mixed feelings of OJ. You know what I'm saying? They're gonna say, okay, he was this, he was that. He was a murderer. Obviously, did his wife deserve to die just as well as Ron Goldman? No. Who knows if he did it or he had someone else do it or whatever. I don't know. Obviously, it's been almost like 30 years now. Um, you know, but it's crazy. You know what I mean? But he died of cancer of and he was 76 years old. So it's like, you know, it just goes to show you, in life that you just have to do the right thing. And it's like, yeah, he lived his life, you know what I mean? But, at the same time, um, it's crazy because um, his reputation is always going to be tarnished because of that. So it's always going to be, oh, he's a murderer, he's did this, he did that. So so at the end of the day, it's like I say to people, it's crazy what happened, to him. I'm just gonna just see this real quick. I want you guys if this goes. Hold on one second. But yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy world we're in today. Some people are gonna remember him as a great football player. Some maybe good actor. Some people remember him as a murderer. Obviously, you know I want to just show you guys this real quick.
The 5 freeway, okay? Right now, we're all okay, but welcome back to GMA. 95 million people tuned into that slow-speed Bronco chase live in 1994. We're going to have more on the reaction after the death of OJ Simpson and a closer look at the trial that changed America. Our senior national affairs correspondent, Deborah Roberts, is here with more for us. Good morning, Deborah.
Good morning, Michael. And who can forget that video? OJ Simpson's legacy should be a classic American success story. A kid who made his way out of poverty to become a Heisman Trophy winner, a handsome, successful pitchman and actor, the face of Hollywood wealth and celebrity. But this morning, many will only remember him as the famous murder defendant.
Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen.
It was the trial of the century. OJ Simpson, a former football superstar turned Hollywood darling, accused of murdering ex-wife Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ron Goldman in 1994. Wall-to-wall coverage of the 8-month trial setting viewing records, the case sparking an appetite for courtroom drama.
By the time the O.J. Simpson trial came to be, you had that entire frustration from the Black community and other people of color who had been upset by the LAPD specifically.
The trial changing the course of TV coverage before it even began. Days after the murders, 95 million watching live coverage of Simpson's white Ford Bronco's slow-speed police chase.
Please, I'm coming up the 5 freeway.
The famous suspect eventually surrendering, but the media frenzy was only beginning. Simpson's defense lawyers, dubbed the Dream Team, led by Robert Shapiro, Robert Kardashian, and Johnny Cochran. Brian Dunn working closely alongside them.
This case was about social divisions, and a lot of these things were starkly brought into focus by the circumstances of this case. But to us, we were simply trying to give this man a fair trial to the best of our abilities.
The team soon framing the murder case into a commentary about race in America, focusing on the LAPD and questions about injustice.
Out of nowhere, we were given a series of tapes that had some incredibly inflammatory, racially inflammatory remarks from this particular individual who was the lead detective. It was not planned. But Mr. Cochran was not going to downplay it.
Cato Kalin, a key witness, saying they knew how to speak to a jury.
I saw that they actually were a dream team, and I knew that seeing the jurors and seeing Johnny Cochran and the way he had his language, and they knew how to convince doubt in the mind of the jurors.
On the opposite side, the prosecution led by Marcia Clark with Christopher Darden. Then this turning point, which some called the legal blunder of the century. Prosecutors asking Simpson to try on the blood-stained gloves found at the crime to prove he did it. Simpson appearing to struggle to get them on, leading to one of the most famous lines ever spoken in a criminal trial.
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
When the jury's verdict was announced, 150 million tuned in.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder.
Oprah watching with her show's live audience. The reaction split, just as it was nationwide. Large numbers of blacks celebrating what some saw as long-awaited judicial vindication. Many whites seeing a travesty of a killer going free. 76-year-old OJ Simpson did eventually serve 9 years in prison for his role in a Las Vegas armed robbery involving his sports memorabilia. He was released 7 years ago. George?
Okay, Deb, thanks. This is our Chief Legal Analyst, Dan Abrams, and our ABC News Live contributor, managing partner at the Cochran firm, Shannon Lloyd. Dan, I have to begin with you. I remember seeing you in that courtroom every single day. Just bring us back there. What was it like inside?
So very different inside the courtroom and outside the courtroom. Inside the courtroom, there were very strict rules. We were all sort of packed into the pews every day watching the case. There was decorum. There was, metal detectors, everything to get into the courtroom. Outside the courtroom, it was a circus. There were people selling hats. There were people selling Jell-O molds. There were people selling a watch that had the Bronco being chased by police as the second hands. They had every sort of imaginable baseball cap of every participant in the case. It was night and day between inside that courtroom and outside that courtroom.
And I mean, it's just one of those things that's happened. You'll never forget where you were, and we all kind of tuned in to watch that. And Sean, you're with the Cochran firm now. So what is the legacy of this case? And what does it say about Johnny Cochran?
It's interesting. This case, although Johnny fought for civil rights his entire career, this actually really brought it to the forefront, right? It brought about the racial divide that was happening in LA at the time. It talked about how lawyers make a difference in being sure that the police and the state are held to a certain standard before they can incarcerate someone. And so here at the firm, the legacy is really that we fight for our clients. We make sure that they have a proper defense, and we make sure that we always put our best foot forward, and we do what we do best, which is advocate for our clients.
And Johnny became, by the way, one of the most famous people in America. I can tell you, months after the case, I'd walk down the street with Johnny Cochran, who became a friend of mine. There was no former president, there was no rock star you could walk with who had more recognition on the street than Johnny Cochran in the months after this case.
I can believe that.
Dan brought up the circus that was happening outside the courtroom. This was so polarizing. How did that factor into the trial and the strategy?
I mean, race was at the base at what they were arguing, right? When we look at the officer that testified and the racial statements that he had made and other things, the shoddy police work, it didn't quite meet the standard that it should have. There was this rush to judgment, this idea that they may have planted evidence. So that played a very pivotal role in the particular trial and how it turned out.
Of course, he was acquitted in the criminal trial, Dan, not so in the civil.
Yeah, I mean, the argument that they made was masterful, but also somewhat absurd in the context of the case, and that was exposed in the civil case, right? Because you had the blood evidence, you had the fiber evidence, you had the glove evidence, you had the domestic violence evidence, you had all these pieces of evidence, and then finally in the civil case, they got the big one that people forget about, which is there was a size 12 Bruno Magli shoe that was the bloody footprint at the scene. OJ Simpson wore a size 12. They weren't able to quite link it to OJ Simpson in the criminal case. Then in the civil case, OJ Simpson had to actually answer questions under oath. And he said, I never would have worn those ugly shoes. They then found a Buffalo Bills newsletter from 8 months before the murder. OJ Simpson was wearing the ugly shoes. So now you have OJ Simpson wearing the shoes of the killer, same size. And so for anyone who had any questions after the criminal case, they should have been addressed.
How did it happen that none of that came up in the criminal case?
They never found it in the criminal case. It came up only in the context of the civil case. That one piece of evidence, that Buffalo Bills newsletter, which there was just nothing that Simpson could say in response to that. Wow.
And Shauna, real quickly, how do you think people are going to look back on O.J. Simpson?
You know, I think they're going to look back with mixed feelings on him himself, but I think the bigger picture is what his legacy left, right? He did many things. First of all, he launched all of Court TV and just this fascination with trials. He also was one of the first athletes to have endorsements. That changed the way athletes interact with their brand. Also, let's think about the fact that he actually brought attorneys and what we do and why the legal system and the injustice in the legal system, it really came to the forefront. So I think it's more about the legacy and the macro effect of what that trial and his life really did.
Shauna, Dan, thank you both so much.
Excuse me, would you mind taking a picture of us? Oh, no problem. Thanks.
So I'm gonna get off this, but like that woman said, there's gonna be a lot of mixed feelings towards OJ Simpson. As far as that, obviously with the murder of his wife and Ron Goldman, that obviously tarnished his legacy as a human being. So some people are probably saying good. I saw a video last night where Bruce Jenner / Caitlyn Jenner, he put a thing, said good riddance, to OJ, because obviously they had some type of relationship and stuff like that. But regardless, nobody's always going to die perfect in this world. Obviously, you want a legacy in this world, but this man, he's always going to be looked upon as a murderer, even if, you know what I'm saying? You just heard them speak about the civil case, and that shoe, but he's gone now. So, I don't know. I just say this: who knows if God has him or if Satan has him? Who knows? So I'm just gonna say this to everybody: think about your decisions in life and make sure that you make the right decisions, even though it's hard as hell. But you don't want to end up like that. Okay. But feel free to check out more of my YouTube videos. Type in my name. It's Russell Mills, RUSSELLMILLS, May 22nd, 2017. My first video was called Why Black People Settle for Less. Everybody take care. Peace.